I want to switch my camera. The fuck? Monetization. What is going on, you beautiful people? I hope you all are doing fantabulous. And of course, it's not going to let me change it. All right. We're going to have to do it via the laptop. No worries. We can do that. That works for us. Why not? Dun, dun, dun. Pop out dashboard. Man, there is so many things that are involved with a YouTube live sometimes. Like all the little nitpicky things that are going on here. But I hope everybody's doing well. Tonight, we're going to be chatting a little bit about food noise. What do we do about it? How do we deal with it? What exactly is it, more or less? And how it kind of can definitely make the weight management journey and aspect of things very, very challenging. So I'm excited to dive into that. And while I kind of screw around here and get crap figured out, give people a few more minutes to jump on in here. And for me to kind of get my crap all organized. Sweet. Alrighty, let's get this party started talking about the food noise things. Let me just pull her up here. Cool. So food noise, very interesting topic, and it is certainly something that a lot of individuals that are struggling with their weight are often dealing with. And to be quite honest, we don't exactly know what it is. It's not been kind of associated as a specific medical term or having any kind of particular physiology or anything like that we have identified at this point in time. We have a pretty good idea of kind of what's going on in the terms of food noise, but there are still a few things around it and what it actually means, what's involved with it, and that sort of thing. So that's kind of what I'm going to break down for you guys tonight, is going in a little bit of detail around that. What do we know? What do we not know? And then talk about how we kind of mitigate and can kind of manage this food noise, because obviously it is a big problem for a number of individuals. So more specifically, it is referred to as kind of the intrusive thoughts that often come with a preoccupation with food. So people will often describe they're thinking about, what am I going to eat next? When's my next meal? When's my next snack? What should I have? Should I have this? Should I not have this? And it's very much kind of an obsessive component where it can involve, a couple of times a day it might come up. And for other people, it might be as soon as they wake up, they start thinking about food and are very preoccupied with it. So much so that it might actually present and start causing problems in their day-to-day life. So obviously, something or a lot of different components are certainly conjunction in that and can play a role. And so it's something that, can be quite harmful for people if we don't properly manage it and take care of it. Dang it, what happened to that screen there? Okay, so what we know in terms of what exactly is going on here is that the food noise is a combination of kind of multiple things. It's a lot of biology in one sense. There's also components of physiology, genetics, and in general, kind of the environment that you might be operating from, your experience with your weight, with dieting, and that sort of thing. Now, before I get too far here, one thing that I really want to clarify is that some food noise is okay. In some respects, it's totally okay to have food noise. And the reason being is that 30,000 years ago, this food noise was what got us up off our butts and got us to go hunt and gather. So it's normal. It helps to remind us to eat. The problem and the area that we bump into it with it being a problem is when it becomes so overt that it is becoming intrusive in your day-to-day life. But some food noise is definitely good. It's important and plays an important role in terms of your health and general well being to make sure you're getting enough calories and that sort of thing. There's a lot of things that can kind of affect how loud the food noise is, how present it is, and that sort of thing. It can range from things like what your stress levels are looking like, how you're sleeping, how restrictive you've been, whether you're consuming a lot of processed, high calorie, high salt, fat, sugar foods, and also if you're maybe not nourishing your body with enough protein and the nutrients and stuff that you need. As I said, we don't know exactly what's kind of causing it. A couple of things that we do know is that food noise tends to be worse in people that are actively dieting and in individuals that are living in larger bodies. Actively dieting makes sense that you're thinking and more preoccupied with food. You're in a calorie deficit. Your body is wanting more food. People that are living in larger bodies, this might be part of the reason why they're struggling with their weight, and that there might be a stronger signal that's ultimately coming from their brain that is causing this food noise and causing some problems for them. Likely, what it really is a combination of cravings and wanting of food coming from your primal brain, and the discussion and the preoccupation with the food is playing a role in terms of your modern brain and what's going on there. And so, to give you guys a little bit more of the physiology between the primal brain and modern brain, I've talked about this a couple of times before, but to break it down really quickly for you, when I look at our appetite regulatory system in the brain, I like to split the brain into two parts: primal brain, modern brain. Primal brain, this is the part of your brain that you share with the animals. It basically has the sole goal of trying to keep you alive for the next 5 minutes, and it doesn't care how it does that. The thing with the primal brain is that over the course of your life, when it is creating wantings and cravings for food and stuff like that, it has learned what are the foods and items that are going to be the most calorie dense, and also the ones that are going to be the most rewarding and the most delicious. Those also tend to be the ones that are highest in calories, packed full of the salt, fat, and sugar. And so, in terms of that case of things, if that primal brain detects that you're hungry or needing food of some kind, well, it knows that yes, an apple can provide nourishment, but so can that apple pie. And it's always going to go for that apple pie because it's just apple effing pie. The other thing about our primal brain that's a bit problematic is that it's very focused on the present. And so it's not caring about what eating apple pie every day would do to your health in the next 10 years. It's not its problem. It doesn't care. It's thinking solely of just keeping you alive. And if it's detecting that you are hungry and needing nourishment, it is going to ramp up your cravings, wanting, and food seeking behaviors in order to get you to go and find that food. Now, obviously, you're not just sitting around and eating apple pie all day long, and that's because you have a modern brain. But your modern brain is made up of two systems as well. So we have system one, which is your fast thinking brain, and we have system two, which is your slow thinking brain. So the wanting, the cravings come up from your primal brain, goes up to your modern brain, and what it ultimately hits in your modern brain is first that system one. Your system one, the fast thinking, this is a very intuitive system. So this is running on, kind of that gut feeling. It's based on experiences. There isn't really much actual thought process that's going on here. It's very automatic, seemingly. So it's kind of making those snap decisions, and ultimately where a majority of your decisions are being made. What we know with this system one is that this is kind of where that food noise might be arising from. We know that we get the aspect of permission thoughts. So the thoughts that come up are things like, oh, you know what, I had a really hard day, so I deserve to go and have this cake or this apple pie. Or you know what, it's been a long day. Like, we don't need to go to the gym. We'll go to the gym tomorrow, and we'll work out for an extra hour to make up for it, etc. Basically, this system one, when it gets that signal of craving and wanting from that primal brain, is going to generate those thoughts that basically give you permission to engage in that behavior. What is kind of thought is that the primal brain wanting and craving, hitting that system one, is then creating this food noise aspect of things and starting that conversation and that rumination and intrusive thoughts. And ultimately, it's coming down to your other system of the modern brain called the system two, which is your slow thinking brain. Your system two then has to wrestle with, well, are we actually hungry? Are we just bored? Should we actually go to the gym? The system two is much more of a methodical, logical part of your brain. It's not making quick snap decisions. It's kind of thinking things through, taking its time. And so it's kind of being to be the part of your brain that's going to wrestle with this food noise and have this back and forth with the system one thoughts and whether you should engage in these behaviors or not. So kind of a complex interplay as to what's going on within the brain. Again, we don't exactly know all the ins and the outs. This is partly my theory and ideas kind of around it and how I explain it to people, and also just looking at the biology and some of the things that we know is some of the kind of the thought processes and ideas that are coming from it. So ultimately, though, what everybody wants to know is what can we do about the food noise? How can we knock it down? Is there something we can do or make happen so that it's less intrusive? It's not causing as many problems and such like that. And so the pretty straightforward things that we'd want to look at are first looking at, managing your stress, managing your sleep, dealing with anything in your life that, might cause you to emotionally eat or be more driven to that, engaging in activity. All of these things are going to be foundational in helping you to mitigate and manage it and to take care of it. And then the other things that I look at in terms of managing the primal brain, and what I often talk about people in this regard, is looking at what your nutrition is focused on. Are you getting enough protein? Are you eating consistently enough during the day? Are you eating enough in general, or are you eating such a low amount most of the days that ultimately you're binging on the other side of things? What is your fiber intake like? Are you getting plenty of fruits and veggies and micronutrients? Ultimately, all of these things are going to help to dampen down that primal brain and dampen down that signal of wanting and craving, and ultimately helping to calm that food noise down and to at least make it more in the background instead of very much on the forefront. The other thing that we need to really, really focus on in this aspect when we start building in these nutritional patterns is we have to be consistent. Like, consistency is hands down going to be one of the most important factors that are going to help you in managing the food noise long term. Eating more protein for one day isn't going to get that food noise and that signal from that primal brain to calm down. We need to do it consistently for a few days. Actually, more likely, we need to do it consistently for a few weeks in order to fully get the full effect of calming that food noise down, so you can be having less intrusive thoughts and ultimately better manage cravings and hunger. Now, the medications like Wegovy, Mounjaro, and what have you certainly can be beneficial as well. They can play the role in calming down the food noise. And some people find that, like, immediately when they take the medication or within a couple of days of taking the medication, suddenly the food noise shuts off. And so that is exactly what the medication is doing, is it's calming down that wanting and craving from that primal brain. And it's a tool to help you to do that while you work on all the other things of getting enough nutrients, eating enough fiber, and that sort of thing, so that you can keep that food noise aspect of things calm down for the long term and ultimately be more successful in managing your weight. But one of the big things is that, or I guess one of the things that a lot of people don't realize, is that while the medications can be magical in some ways in calming down that food noise component of things, if we aren't properly nourishing our bodies, if we're losing a lot of weight, if we're being too restrictive and what have you, ultimately, even with the medication, that food noise can return. And so the way to kind of think about it is that if the signal of wanting and craving that's coming from that primal brain is kind of like a wave on the ocean, usually that wave goes along, hits the shoreline, does whatever it wants, gets you to eat whatever it wants, etc. When you take a drug, it's like you put up a wall. And so the wave hits the wall, bounces off, signal doesn't get through, don't get the food noise, etc. But if we don't take care of that primal brain, if we don't manage the nutritional aspects, nourishing our body and that sort of thing, well, that primal brain signal is just going to be sitting there and building and building and building and building until finally it's going to reach a point where it's going to be able to crash over that wall. It doesn't matter which drug I'm using, how much of that drug I'm pumping into your system. If you're not taking care of the biology and managing that primal brain is going to get exactly what it wants because biology always wins. So it's important to kind of recognize that, yes, the medications are magical, but you still need to put in the work for them to be the most effective, especially in the long term. So that's the biology, taking care of your body, etc. And basically, in conclusion, food noise is definitely a concern. It certainly can be a very intrusive and quite life disrupting aspect of things for many individuals. There's likely a multitude of different factors that are influencing it, but primarily it's coming down to kind of the biological, physiological aspects between hunger, primal brain, hedonic hunger, and that sort of thing. And ultimately, long-term dieting or on and off dieting, as well as being restrictive and cutting certain foods out of your diet and stuff like that, are all going to contribute and likely play a role. So important to kind of recognize that piece of things. Ultimately, though, we can manage it. We're not going to be able to get rid of it altogether because we still want to have some food noise because it's a good thing. But we can manage it both with medications and looking at nutrition and dietary patterns and stuff like that. But fundamentally, it's going to be the combination of all of those things, focusing on them consistently and finding a way that all of those things can be sustainable for you into the long term. And that's really what's going to give you the greatest and longest term success in terms of how to manage that food noise into the long term. If you're not currently on the medication or haven't been able to get on a medication or what have you, I would definitely start focusing on those nutritional aspects of things. Whatever amount of protein you think you are getting, I can assure you, you probably need a heck of a lot more. Generally, one way to kind of calculate protein intake is to take whatever your goal body weight is in pounds and times it by 1. And that's the grams of protein you should be consuming in a day. So if your goal body weight, for example, is 150 grams or is 150 pounds, you would then consume 150 grams of protein would be a good amount for you to take in order to manage food noise, nourish your body, and that sort of thing. So that's some general guidelines for you there. There's a lot of other factors and things to kind of take into account with fiber and whatnot like that, but that can kind of give you some basics to start with. Also, if you are on the medication and you aren't doing these things, I highly suggest you start building and working on them because that food noise, that biology is ticking away in the background and it is going to ramp up and cause you some problems down the road. So food for thought, no pun intended on that, but that's food noise, what to do about it and such like that. And yeah, so we'll take some questions and do a little chat here. Michelle, thank you. I can't tell you how helpful and informative this is. Awesome. Glad you got something out of it, Michelle. It's always great to hear. Always kind of helps to reinforce that we are doing some good things out here and happy to help wherever I can. And Anne agreed. Awesome. Cool. Much smaller crowd we got going on tonight, but that is totally okay. So, yeah, because we do these every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So be sure to always come out and hang out and bring any questions that you might have. And yeah, we'll keep kind of looking at all the various topics and questions that I get and kind of do a live around them. So my doctor says to increase Mounjaro monthly. What are my thoughts? Well, with these medications, it really needs to be individualized. So when we look at drugs like Mounjaro and Wegovy, the thing with them is that they are so effective, even at lower doses, that we don't need to try and push the dose to be as high as possible or to the level that they used at the maximum in the studies. If you find that, say, 5 milligrams once a week of Mounjaro is effective for you, sweet, fantastic. That's awesome. Like, then keep it there. That's the dose that works for you. If you find that 5 is okay, you're not doing too bad, you're curious about going up to 10, cool, go up to 10 or go up to 15. What dose everybody is going to need is going to vary person to person. Ultimately, it's about, again, finding the dose that works for you and is going to be most effective for you, but also not causing all kinds of side effects and ruining your life and such like that. So those are some things to think about. In general, with the drugs, though, because they are such long acting medications and have such a long half-life, so up to about 1 week or so, we dose them once a week, and we increase the dose after 4 doses, so after about a month, and then we bump that dose up. The reason being is that's going to help your body to develop a tolerance to the medication and ultimately manage the side effects and not causing worsening side effects. Like if you went from 0 to a 15 milligram dose overnight of Mounjaro, you would not have a fun time in any kind of way. So we slowly titrate it up month over month in order to get the best results and the least amount of side effects. Michelle, does your body adjust and ultimately need to increase? So ultimately need to increase the dose of the Mounjaro. It's not that your body adjusts. Like if you find a dose that works for you, that's awesome. You could theoretically stay on that dose for the rest of your life. It more goes back to that wall and wave on the ocean concept that we were talking about. So again, that primal brain, that signal of wanting, craving, hunger, and that sort of thing is like a wave on the ocean, crashes into the shoreline, does whatever it wants and what have you. When you take that drug, you put a wall up. And so that primal brain signal hits the wall, bounces off of it. If you're not taking care of that biology, ultimately that signal from that primal brain is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger until it crashes over that wall. And yes, you could increase the dose so that the wall gets bigger and ultimately that wave maybe doesn't get through, but you're going to bump into that same problem again if you're still not getting enough nutrients, not nourishing your body, taking care of your body and that sort of thing, because the wall will just get bigger, but so will this primal brain signal until finally it ultimately gets what it wants. You see, with that primal brain signaling, it's a signal and system that was developed 30,000 years ago when food was very scarce. So it needed to be very powerful. And ultimately, like I said, with the primal brain, it has the sole goal of keeping you alive. And it's going to do whatever it needs to do to make sure that happens. And so if it means overrunning whatever drug that you're pumping into it, you're damn right, it's going to make it happen because it believes that there's no food in the environment, that you're actively dying, and that if it doesn't overrun this drug and this problem, you might potentially die. Now, obviously, it is a bit dramatic because clearly food is not a concern or anything like that, but it doesn't know any better. It thinks it's in a world that existed 30,000 years ago. Again, that's going to be kind of problematic, and it's going to get a little overzealous and ultimately bump you into some problems. Some people are going to have a primal brain that's more sensitive, that's more acute and increasing that signal more acutely and what have you. So they might need just a higher dose right out the gate. But ultimately, you can generally keep that primal brain at bay and subdued if you make sure you're properly nourishing your body by getting enough protein, fiber, and that sort of thing. So, Michelle, this is the info I have been looking for. I'm on 5 milligrams and feel food freedom for the first time ever. Had a gastric sleeve, lost 160 pounds, and then I realized just how severe my food issues were. Thank you so much. My pleasure, Michelle. And yeah, it's something that I find isn't often talked about and even kind of brought up. It's more this idea that you can just take this medication and it's going to resolve and take away all the problems and stuff like that. But that's not how that's going to work. Like, you need to take care of that biological aspect of things and recognize it's a balancing act of managing what your body ultimately needs, but also trying to work towards your weight loss goals and stuff. So keeping that in mind, I think you have the right perspective, and God knows you've definitely been through the ringer in terms of a lot of different aspects of it. So keep doing with what you're doing. Find the consistent and sustainable habits that ultimately work for you. And yeah, keep it up. So sweet deal. Great questions, Michelle. Thanks for the commentary, everybody. Yeah, I think we might leave her at that as our live for tonight. Yeah, like I said, a bit of a smaller crowd, but we'll see what next week brings. I still got to come up with all my topics and stuff like that. So if you have any particular topics or anything like that, feel free to either drop me a comment down below of this live here, or check me out on the gram and my various other channels at the official Dr. Dan, and you can leave me your comments and questions there, and I will figure out a time to come on the live and make it happen. But we'll be back next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So looking forward to seeing everybody there. And yeah, I hope you all have a fantastic evening.